that count.
Hi everybody, Katie here with MEPACon. Welcome back to our last stream of our game day. We're here with Carcosa Creations, Kim and Kevin, who have been longtime GMs and attendees of MEPACon. We're super happy to have a part of our MEPACon family here, as well as Trish, and Eric's running our tech for us in the background, though he's hidden his video. So we just wanted to get together today to talk a little bit about LARPing and what Kim and Kevin do. If you have not had the experience of a Carcosa LARP, you're missing out, let me tell you. I never get to actually
attend them, blush.
but I have heard some amazing stories. They come highly, highly recommended from everyone who's ever participated. So why don't you guys start us off, and I want to know, how did you get started in LARPing?
Well, you'll have to start that because you started before I joined, so.
Okay, so I will. So, funny story. So when I first got into role-playing games, and we're talking here back in the 80s when people continued to set D&D books on fire because of their own fantasies, I didn't like LARPs much. And that was even more so in the 90s when LARPs had a reputation for being pretentious. A lot of them were White Wolf style LARPs, which on the positive side drew in a lot more players, including really expanding the hobby outside of its original demographic, which were often white male college students. So yes, good, that. On the other hand, they also drew in a lot of, let's face it, pretentious jackasses. So I didn't like LARP much and stayed away from it. But a little over 10 years ago, I was running a scenario called Victim's Ball for Rogue Cthulhu, out of Origins at the time. I think it was Origins. And I ran it as a tabletop, and people said, that would make a great LARP. And I, wasn't a big fan of LARPs, but I knew two people, Megan and Eli, Elder Entertainment, who we still work with at Gen Con, because they're wonderful people.
They are.
They ran LARPs. They were just getting started as what became Elder Entertainment. So I knew them, and I went to them, and I said, hey, people keep telling me that I should turn this game into a LARP. Would you help me? And they were thrilled to do it. And so I rewrote it as a LARP, added a bunch of characters. I had a friend who was a carpenter who built the central prop that the game really needs to make it go, which is a functional 6-foot guillotine.
You ought to see when that gets into the car.
Yeah, and let me tell you, there is nothing quite as exciting in all of my time running LARPs as the looks you get pushing a guillotine on a luggage cart through the lobby of a hotel, where 300 people are wondering where you are going with that and for what purpose.
No, there's one funnier.
What's that?
When we pushed it through SUNY Oswego.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to carry it on the elevator, and we had our bevy of college students following us with the guillotine.
There was less of a crowd around there.
Yeah, but it was still funny as hell. I mean, we have a guillotine on a college campus.
Yeah. Also, transporting it to Gen Con one year on a roof rack.
Oh, jeez.
Wondering, just desperately avoiding the police, because I really didn't want to have that conversation.
That must have gotten some looks on the highway.
Yeah, the blade. The blade was at the time styrofoam, so it's not like the thing is actually dangerous. But
yeah, I changed it to Warbler, so it looks thinner now and a little bit more realistic. But back then, it was just this chunky styrofoam, like you whack it on your head, the thing's gonna shatter kind of styrofoam.
In any case, it was that scenario that got me into it. So I wrote it as a LARP. We ran it at Origins, and it was wonderful. My friend Ryan, who NPC'd for us, caught something I did not, something that's been my sort of guiding principle since, that when the game was done, he noticed people who were laughing and hugging, the sort of body language that one expects from people who've survived or been through a traumatic event. And that really struck me, in the sense that LARPs can do something that tabletops cannot, which is immerse the players in emotions, in feelings, in the kind of game experience, as much as I don't love the word experience, that it's hard to achieve in just a tabletop game, because the players are physically in the moment.
Absolutely.
And the way we did that is The game involves the use of ribbons. So when the players arrive, each player, as the attendees at a party called the Victims Ball, receive a red ribbon, which is placed around the neck at the point where the blade would go through. So no matter what else, the player has that tactile sense that they can feel around their neck that stays there through the whole game.
Because most people aren't used to wearing like a choker necklace constantly. So it's a sensation difference that really plays up throughout the entire 4-hour LARP.
And that's where things got started from there. Because I'm a historian by profession, a lot of my scenarios have been historically based. Because one of the things that Call of Cthulhu does is it's open to any time or place. So there's 3 Victims Balls. The first one set during the French Revolution. The second takes place 40 years later. And the third takes place 80 years after that. Each one attaches to the previous with certain bits, props. Think of the way Marvel does with Easter eggs, where you can watch a movie and enjoy it on its own, but if you notice the connections to other movies, it enriches the
Even
experience.
better.
Similar principle. So, for instance, in those, the same prop shows up in all 3 scenarios. And it's not just the prop, it represents the same object. Older now, but having existed through all three games.
Nice.
And that's definitely something that once I started joining in, not only with helping NPC and to write, we started emphasizing those little Easter eggs more. And even in the design process, incorporating those Easter eggs and specifically saying, oh, I want this to have a link to Walking Blues. I want this to have a link to The Boat or some of our other games. But to how I actually got Kevin in, it's actually a directly Mepicon story.
Ooh,
because I had been bugging Kevin from when I first met him in 2012 and I found out about him doing the LARPs. I'm like, you should come to Mepicon. It's my home convention. Fun fact, Fall Mepicon is 12 years and my 24th convention with Mepicon.
Wow.
Unless you count, this is a mini con, so 24 and a half technically for Fall, but who's counting?
Does 2 mini cons equal a regular one?
Well, we don't know.
No, we'd
There's
have to
only
have
been
3.
one mini-con.
We'll have to
Anyway.
ask that at the second mini-con.
So I begged him to come, and the first one he brought was Bedlam Carcosa, which is set at an insane asylum, because I thought that would just go over very well with the Mepicon crowd. And
another historical one, that one set in the 1840s.
And actually has ties to Victims Ball, speaking of, Easter eggs and such.
Yep.
So we were a little bit light on players because it was the first time that a LARP had really been pushed at Mepicon. There had been, if I recall correctly, a werewolf LARP previously that had gone to 2 cons, if I recall right. But then they kind of dropped off, and that's when Kevin and I ended up eventually stepping up. So I actually did a non-playing character for him. And it was the first time I had actually LARPed, period, properly. And I was nervous as hell. And then I almost ended up flying off the little stage in the bar area where we were set up at the Clark's in Clark's Summit, going, I'm a canary, I can fly. And I almost literally flew into the chairs that were making up the cells.
You did fly briefly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was milliseconds, but
yeah, off the stage.
At least I didn't end up in the chairs.
Yeah.
But that kind of became a real defining moment, and I actually use that moment of I'm a canary, I can fly as the example of that crazy for when we're explaining the different ways that one can go crazy during our rules explanation. That's the one that I typically do so that the players can get a bit of a laugh as I'm running around flapping my wings, looking like, an overgrown landed chicken. So it was iconic, that first LARP at Mepicon, because it made us into Carcosa.
Yeah, the name actually
came directly from that.
We wanted a name that would carry the sound of our initials, but it's also a nod to the fact that that was the first game that Kim participated in.
So
That's awesome.
it's Mepicon very much plays into our origin story as a couple, and even though we were just friends when everything started, the more games that we ran together, it was actually Gen Con 2015. That was the first Gen Con I went out with Kevin and actually helped out Elder Entertainment with Megan and Eli and Wes and Ben and all the amazing people with Elder. Can't say enough good things about them. They're essentially like our big parent.
If not for them, I probably would not have been able to get started.
Yeah, they're a huge part of who we are, and getting to meet all of them the first time, I was nervous as hell. Absolutely nervous. I had never done LARPing.
I'm sensing a theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they loved you.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
Of course
But
they love you,
one
Kim.
of the things we realized at the end of that weekend, we were walking back from drinking and, having laughs with friends, is that
Oh, I love you.
we seamlessly worked together as a couple, not just, romantically speaking, but actually running the LARPs. I kind of would be able to read his mind where he needed to go. I would get it done. And we just synced really, really well. And that was essentially the moment I feel that Carcosa truly was born, even though the name didn't come till a few years later. But the dynamic of Kevin and I really becoming two parts of a functioning machine. Hi, Loki. We have a little bit of a cat visitor below us.
That's what I've been looking at. In case you're wondering where my eyes are going. I'm gonna try to pet
Who
the
has
cat.
not been on a Zoom where a dog, cat, or child hasn't?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, Loki actually just came back to my house. He had been with a ex of mine, actually had been taking care of him for 5 years, and things worked out that now he's home, and it definitely he's been getting all the lovin's and everything.
Aw.
Yeah, he's a little bit camera shy. Otherwise, I'd pick him up, but I don't feel like giving blood for the blood gods right now. So
that's
Okay, have enough. And there'll be more tonight.
exactly. We'll
Wow.
just let him weave around our legs, and he'll be a happy cat. But sorry, I also tend to derail the comment train.
That's
quite a
okay.
bit. But
No problem.
that Gen Con really solidified us as two pieces of a working LARP machine, essentially.
Yeah. I would, just a funny aside, I don't particularly LARP, but Eric and I have been running Pathfinder scenarios. And so we wrote one together for the first time. And as you're describing the way that you and Kevin synced, it was like, oh, that's exactly how it was for Eric and I. I wrote stuff, I sent it to him, he fixed stuff, sent it back, and it was seamless. And we sat down with a group of people, all from Mepicon, actually. We said, come to our house, we want to play test this. And they said, okay. And they came over, and we were having dinner before we started, and they said, so did you figure out how you were going to GM together? Did you divide it up? What did you do? And I'm like, no, we really didn't talk about it. And we sat down and we GM'd, and it was seamless. And we've never had a conversation about it, but we've run it now, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. And every time we just, it's okay, I'm doing this. And then, all right, I'm going to toss it over to Eric. And we just bounce back and forth with no problems. Now, granted, we've been married for 11 years today, so we've been together.
Happy anniversary!
Thank you.
I didn't realize it was exactly today. That's fantastic.
It's exactly today. Yeah, we chose the game day to be exactly today because we wanted something exciting to do, because we were supposed to be in Europe, but we're obviously not. So I said, let's have a game day instead, because at least that's something we can do that's fun and do it together. So he's not on camera, but he is right next to me. So anyway, but it's funny how you create those bonds through gaming that you didn't even realize, were necessarily there.
Because some of ours, we're not actually communicating much because so much is going on, and in a lot of cases, we're going with very large numbers. When I first started, the wisdom I heard was 1 GM per 6 to 8 players.
Sorry, I gotta laugh at that, knowing how many we have.
What was last Mepicon? What was Saturday night? Was close to 40?
Had
It was definitely mid-30s.
Yeah, it's 30 something, and there's just two of us. So
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
lot of what happens, one of us is just taking up and running with. And there are things. One of the things that is a lot of fun for me is I find out subplots that I didn't know existed until post game, because I don't hear them, I don't see them, they're just happening, and that's great.
There's been a few times players have come to me for a GM aside, and they're like, "Oh, Kevin said this," and I'll go, "Oh, really? This is news to me.
He did?
All right, let's run with
Wait,
it."
he did what now?
Yeah.
you know it's 6 to 8 players per average GM, right?
Yeah.
Aw,
That's true.
Thank you.
Yeah, you
now
guys are
you're
above
really gonna get me
average.
blushing.
And one of the things about LARPs is that they handle a large number of players. They often thrive on larger number of players, precisely because you can stage interplayer conflict in a way that tabletop games just don't.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to bring back around with how you mentioned, Katie, about you and Eric writing together. So it was a couple of years before I felt comfortable with writing my first LARP, Opening of the Mouth. And I actually wrote that pretty much entirely on my own to prove that I could. Because, I mean, well, when you got this big brain next to you, you could sometimes feel a little bit overshadowed.
I know how you feel,
contributed
Kim.
exactly one paragraph.
No, you contributed 2 because it was both versions of the ritual.
Okay,
That's
one
about
paragraph in 2 versions. Yeah, I did basically nothing. It was all hers.
But what really had us having our gelling moment, what you were saying with the writing, was we had entered a 24-hour LARP writing competition at a different convention in New England. And we had to, normally they recommended up to 5 people for the team.
And there was no limit. They gave you they gave you 4 things to include, 24 hours to write it, 5 to 12 players. You could have as many people on your team as you want. The average team was 5 to 6 people.
I thought it was a limit of 5.
No, there's no
Oh,
limit.
there
No,
wasn't?
the average team was 5 to 6 people.
Oh, what do I know?
We did it with just 2 of us.
Yeah.
And
in 24 hours. And we had to have a GM Bible explaining exactly how to run everything and
diagrams for how to set the room up.
Everything.
So it wasn't just you were running it, it was instructions if you weren't, as if you weren't there and someone else was.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty, explaining our rules in depth. Everything.
And we won money.
Yeah, we actually did. We won second place for that. But it was really when we had our sinking moment, because we could not actually stop and go over stuff because we were cramming that much into 24 hours. I think I barely slept that.
Yeah, I don't think either of us slept much.
I was going to say, I don't think that allows for sleeping. So.
Not really.
And to be honest, the 2 of the games. Wait a minute, which was the third? Did we do a third?
No, we only did 2.
We dropped out because of those ass. It's a long story, but we can't go to that convention anymore because they are not good people.
Okay,
so that's a good reason.
It's a long story, but the short version of it is they said some very nasty things, and while we were there, they attacked Kim in a way that made her want to quit the hobby.
Oh.
So while there were good players there, their convention management is absolutely unacceptable.
And actually that segues into something that we feel very strongly about, which is inclusivity in our games. And we actually really strive for that, and we very much take the Elder Entertainment motto, with wherever you are, wherever you're from, you're welcome.
Honestly, one of the proudest moments that I've ever achieved as a writer was in a game that we got dragged over the coals by those people because, they were bad people. Was the game include the characters are high school students who are secretly studying magic. One of the characters is realizing they are transgendered.
Okay.
I was attacked for this by people at that convention who said basically stay in your lane. On the other hand, I was told, as one of my proudest moments, I was told by a person who is transgendered that this is the best representation they had ever seen in a game of what it's like to try to figure out who you are. Because this character is a teenager who's figuring out, who am I? What am I doing here? What do I want to be called? Where's my life going? Like they're a teenager. They're at that moment where things are not gelled.
Right.
And one of the things that, when bringing up inclusivity, that, I mean, anyone who's on my Facebook page knows more about me, but my players don't necessarily know that I'm not straight and I'm not exactly cisgendered either. So even though I pass very well in that sense, inclusivity in gaming really matters to me because I have experienced sexism in gaming. I have experienced people assuming that, oh, you're cisgendered, you're not allowed to write about that.
Yeah.
And that's why I really I take a lot of pride in our games with how we're able to go ahead and try to include those who often are left out in writing. It's not just a heterosexual cisgendered point of view within our games. And one of the things that we also tried to do, even though they're historical, is as long as the character doesn't have a very specific reason for having their particular gender or gender appearance or whatever in that situation, we allow it to be flip-flopped, changed however a person wants to interpret the character.
Yeah.
So let's say that a female presenting person takes a male presenting character. If they wanted to have that actually be that their body is feminine, but they're presenting as male, they could choose to play that as non-binary. They could choose to be playing as their trans, however they want to interpret that. We leave that in our players' hands so that they have the freedom to bring themselves or who they want to be in that moment to the character.
That's
And
great. And
that's something that I personally find very important because gaming is not just an escape. It's also a reflection and a way to look and analyze in a different sense some things that are really difficult to look at, such as racism, sexism, patriarchy, all of that. We poke at, and we poke at hard.
The people that I was talking about, the other convention, the reason they got on our case and started getting on our case was a game called Walking Blues, which is set in Mississippi in 1937. The game is about supernatural horror, but it's also about the very real horror of racism. Wow. One of the characters, all of the characters are black, with one exception. That white character, his power is essentially white privilege.
Oh.
Like, that's the written in. Every character has a power. Some are more supernatural, some are very ordinary. His power is essentially white privilege. Anyone starts a fight with him, they lose.
Oh, interesting.
Because if you're a black man in 1937 in Mississippi and the police show up, who do they believe? Doesn't matter what actually happened. So he's essentially immune to direct attack by other players, because you're ending your own character if you attack him. Wow. Whereas other characters can fight with each other if they want to, back to our rule system for who wins a fight.
Yeah, that's I don't know if you guys had a chance yet to see our earlier stream with Gavin, but we addressed racism in the gaming community with him very openly, and it was great for him to sit down. And we talked a little bit about sexism as well, and that, Mepicon is a safe space, and we want everybody to feel safe when they come there, and we strive really hard to make sure that everyone does. And one of the things that we've focused on for about a year now is how do we communicate that to the community? How do we let people know, hey, this is a safe space? Because we know it as directors, you guys know it as people who have been there for a long time, but how do we get everybody to know? And so we actually created the rainbow stickers that say Mepicon is a safe space.
I still
And
have
I
to
have
give you
them.
my address for you to mail me mine.
Yeah, I'll mail you one. I have them sitting in my house because I
Oh, I
ordered
know.
them
It's just I
so
keep
that we
forgetting
could
to
give
give
them
you
out
the
at the fall
address.
con that never
Of
happened, or
course I'm
spring
getting some.
con.
I'd already asked for some.
Cool.
Yeah, give me an address. And anybody, give me an address and I will mail you a sticker.
We
I
will
have
do
no
that when we're done
problem.
here. No, because so many of our games are set historically. Racism is a thing that we've been able to tackle
Yes.
as a problem because it forms part of the background of a lot of our scenarios.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it's hard to talk about history without that, unless
Absolutely.
you're going back to before that type of prejudice existed. So, for instance, it doesn't form much of a medieval scenario.
Right.
But for anything set after 1500,
And certainly in America.
yeah, and more so in the Americas, but anything after 1500, it's gonna creep in, either quietly in the background or overtly in your face.
Yeah, sometimes
Yes.
it smacks you in the face a little,
But
and sometimes it's needed to.
I mean, it's not far from the fact that I open an American history class every semester by saying something to the effect of, "You're going to get tired of hearing about racism, and I'm not sorry,"
Yeah.
because it underpins 2/3 or more of American history.
Yep,
There's barely
absolutely.
a thing in the history of the United States that isn't determined by racism, one
Yeah.
way or another, and that's just a thing. That's a thing we have to deal with, because
And
that's a thing that happened.
getting back to inclusivity.
Sorry, that's my class time.
No, I know, honey.
Get back to the gaming issue.
Yes. Sometimes the history professor in him just sneaks out a little bit, and Dr. Kreiner peeks his head, even though
I get
we're
it.
talking gaming.
I'm a teacher. I do it too.
But
It's okay.
with the inclusivity in gaming, one of the things that I've always appreciated at MEPACon is that you do curate a safe space. And I actually was one of the people that had to experience that firsthand. And I really appreciate the fact that you guys made sure I was safe. For those of you in general who don't know what I'm talking about, MEPACon handled a very delicate issue where I was touched inappropriately. And said person is now no longer at MEPACon, and I really appreciate that because I feel a lot safer. And they handled it with grace and understanding. And as someone who is a sexual assault survivor from other various things, I can vouch for MEPACon with just how caring and kind of a community they are. There's a reason why you guys are my home con. There's a reason why you guys are my family. And I do truly consider you family and love each and every one of you because of it, even if some of you drive me up a wall. Not you guys, but I'm talking about other people at the con because, hey, that's what happens with families. But MEPACon is honestly, I think, one of the leading examples about how to be inclusive, but not to exclude almost in the name of inclusivity. Because I feel like sometimes it can be taken too far, and if you're not gay enough, if you're not queer enough, if you're not, enough, sometimes in those type of exclusively inclusive communities, you could feel left out. But you guys, you're just warm and welcoming and kind.
Yeah.
And that matters a lot as both a gamer, as a gender wacky person. And
I think that's an official term, but it'll do.
I really don't care. It works for me.
That works. Gender
Hey, whatever works for you.
Exactly. But
You're
you guys,
describing yourself. I think
Yeah.
you have the right to describe it the way you
yeah, true.
That, yes.
But you guys have always really MEPACon's home.
Eric.
That's the best
You're
way
off.
I could say it in 3 words. MEPACon is home.
Yeah.
And I try to spread the gospel far and wide of MEPACon because of that. Every single other event we go to, hey, this is when next MEPACon is. You should join us.
Yeah, we do that.
We appreciate
and
that.
There's just so many amazing memories and also seeing how the LARP has grown at Mepicon.
Yes.
That it first started out as just Saturday nights. Then Saturday nights started growing really large, and we're like, well, maybe we should also add a Friday night. And then we added a Friday night.
And even my favorite part is writing. We've written some specifically to the themes.
Yes.
Yeah, which is
that's
great.
kind of becoming our
Love that.
signature if we can.
Like I'm not a real anime fan, but we'd heard since it was supposed to be animation. I talked to some friends of mine who were, and they suggested the idea of a mecha-based outer space generational ship thing, and had MEPA been live and in person, that's what we were working on. A
Well,
LARP that takes
we'll be
place
back.
aboard a generation ship.
We're
where
not
the
going
characters
anywhere.
Are born and raised aboard a ship. So were their parents, so were their grandparents, and so on.
Nice.
Back generation after generation, the game being set near the end as the ship is now arriving.
So there's a little sneak preview for all you fans who are watching.
Yeah.
You know a little bit of what's to come, but we're not going to give you any more details than that.
If we do that.
Well, I mean, we still probably are. You got it most of the way we're in.
But this is
And
true.
So
our
we'll
next
do it at
theme-
some point. We just don't know when.
Well,
and
there
our
may be
next
a more
in-person-
appropriate theme in the fall.
Well,
If-
that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean we're not ever going to run it. Anyway, so this is a typical thing
This
with
is-
us
this is what-
answering
this is what we
and
do.
pulling back the curtain a little bit. This is very normal for us.
Yeah. Our
Well,
next
sorry, go ahead.
in-person event will have the animations and anime theme whenever that is.
Okay,
So
then we will finish that one then if it's in
yes.
person.
yeah,
Because
we
one of the things I did
decided
wanna
that
bring up
we're gonna
was the
hold that
fact that
theme for our next
LARP
in-person event. So
What's that?
I think she was saying that was the next in-person
The
event,
next
even though the
whether or not
mic
it's
Yeah,
in
is
that-
November.
screwy.
That theme is going to stick with whenever it's in person. That
Okay, so
whenever that might come to
if
pass.
the October November was it November?
Yeah,
November.
November, honey. It's always November.
If the
second
November
weekend
event
of
is in
November.
person, that'll be the theme then.
yes.
Good to know.
And if it is not in person, then it will not be the theme.
Okay, because one of the things that to answer a question you brought up a while back was LARP does different things than tabletop,
Yes.
and you really have to be aware of that. I think because there are things you can ask a LARP to do that you can't ask a tabletop game to do.
Like taking off the shoes for Victim's Ball.
The ribbons, that music and sound.
Yes.
Sound. Oh, sound is so much fun. And especially this is also getting onto another part of inclusivity that really matters to me for dealing with disabilities and chronic illness. Hi, that's also me. Because I have lupus, I have fibromyalgia, and I have a few other problems with me. So sometimes running around like a maniac like I used to in the LARPs can really be detrimental the next day to me, and sometimes I'll need multiple days to recover if I'm doing a really pushing NPC role. So instead, a lot of the games for us, I'm actually running sound and tech instead. This also helps because, well, I love my husband, but he is not tech savvy.
This is true. In fact, the first scenario that I wrote, knowing that I had two of us,
Yes.
the imitation game, which I believe we brought to MEPA,
Yes.
Yes.
uses an end. The characters are the test committee putting a new supercomputer through its paces in the heart of the Cold War. So it's 1950s. So Kim plays.
December 10, 1955.
Yeah, I
There's
used-
an actual card that says the day's date. So that's how I have it memorized, because I'm actually physically the computer in that game.
Oh, fun.
We would have a cardboard interface. It was very low tech because it was needing to be lightweight and transportable. So a cardboard face that says input and output was about the best we could do at the start.
plus some LEDs
Yes, the LEDs were added much later.
Yeah.
But
because computer 1950s, so punch cards.
yes. So we had index cards that were our punch cards. And whenever a player would send one through the input slot to me, I had to grab it, look at it, set off the sound for the computer to be processing. Thank God that was like 30 seconds long, so that then I could grab the right punch card that was the response and then start feeding it out like it was a printer coming out of the machine. So those I was running. I actually was lucky enough, and I want to do another shout out to some amazing people with they're involved not only with Story Machine Games, but also the Museum of Intrigue up in Syracuse, New York at Destiny USA. Jono, they are probably one of the best designers in games that I have ever had the privilege of getting to know as a friend. And they did several game design classes up at the museum about puzzles and game design and actually working in electronics. So
Cool.
at some point, and this is going to be a definite at some point because I looked at the components cost and whoa boy, we're talking in the hundreds of dollars range for making it work. But I am still determined to try. I want to actually build an Arduino driven Urim, which is the name of the computer, so we could actually have punch cards go through a punch reader
Nice.
and actually spit out proper printouts so that I don't have to be running like a mad woman. So that is in the future. We are looking at some higher tech things.
Nice.
And one of the more memorable Mepicon games that you guys probably remember the chaos of, I believe it was one of the last that we had at the Hilton, with Curse of Blood Island, where we led everyone through the vendors hall, which is still probably one of my shining moments as a GM, was parading players through the vendors hall, all in costume, acting like pirates. That was absolutely fantastic, with the people from the portal acting like they were getting murdered because one of the players turned around and murdered him anyway. And doing the whole dying scene. Oh, it was fantastic. But how that ties into with Jono and Museum of Intrigue is I was taking the classes with them at that point, and that was my first time with actually adding puzzles directly into our games. And that's one of the things that, as we've been creating more, granted, it's lacking a little bit on the digital aspect, but as we're trying to do more in-person games, I'm trying to add more of those style components to enrich so that it's not just, our typical horror and plot based, but you actually have to think about some components to be able to get answers or get a little bit of a boost within the game or something like that to enrich gameplay even further. So it's not, oh, it's just the same old thing from Carcosa. No, we continually try to evolve and create more when it comes to our games.
Every new game, we try to include a new component or mechanic.
Yes.
That hasn't been included previously, or to use one we have in a different way. I mean, ultimately, there's a limit to the number of things we can do because
we don't want to clog it down. We try to make sure that our mechanics, especially, are on the very quick and almost parlor-esque style.
I was going to say budget.
Well, that too, but we want to make sure that gameplay is story focused, not as much as I love poking at White Wolf LARPs, rock, paper, scissors focused.
Oh, yeah. That's something else to be said about the nature of LARPs that I don't know if people are familiar with, but there are different kinds of LARPs. And we've tried to stay away from the more traditional White Wolf style.
Or the Boffer style.
Well, we stay far away from the Boffer style. But we've tried to stay away from the more traditional White Wolf theatrical style because it has a character sheet and a lot of rules. And we've both played in a local bi-weekly White Wolf LARP.
Which is a fantastic group of people. It's just
good people, but
the mechanics.
You can spend a game like that. If some characters get in a fight, you can spend the next 2 hours playing rock, paper, scissors. And the immersion is gone.
Yeah.
So we've tried to
no offense to anyone, but that doesn't sound fun to me.
It reaches a point where it isn't. So what we've
Right.
tried to do is render something closer to what's called parlor LARP. Now, in a true parlor LARP, there's only one rule. The only rule in a true parlor LARP is nothing happens to your character without your approval. So if I cast a death spell at your character, if we're playing wizards, for instance, and I cast a death spell at your character, you decide what effect my spell has. So you could decide that you
It
deflect
hits,
it.
you die.
You could decide that you die because it makes a better story, and now I have to deal with the aftermath of what I just did. That's on you. I have no control over that.
But the thing is, to do horror, you need to take away partial agency from your players. You can't let them be able to do absolutely everything, because what's the thing that when you're watching a cheesy horror movie, you scream at the screen because they're being dumb? Run, leave. Why are you even there in the first place?
Well, now those
And
things.
why are you not wearing any pants?
That too.
Well, those things are no longer issues anymore. After the current plague,
We understand exactly why people aren't.
Why do
running
people
and
go into the
stuff.
basement in a horror movie?
Well,
For the
now
same
we
reason
know.
people don't put on a mask to go to a store. So
Yep.
I apologize to all the horror film directors out there who I thought
Yep.
their characters were behaving stupidly. You were right. I was wrong. People are that dumb.
Yes.
Yeah. Lots
but
of my friends have ended up dead. But I'm going to go to the basement too.
yeah,
Turns out that's actually how people behave.
and
Yeah.
how we actually specifically design our games with that is we will design the game to be an enclosed, locked space, whether locked by weather, locked by physical boundaries, locked because it's a spaceship, and if you open the door, there's a little thing called vacuum, and you're gonna asphyxiate to death.
Well, this is another important element between LARP and tabletop.
Yes.
Because in a tabletop game, I fly to Boston. Okay, your character buys a ticket, flies to Boston. Now you're in Boston. Now what? In a LARP, you can't do that. So LARPs need to artificially create an enclosed space.
And also
where
not
players
split the party.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
no, people split all the time in a LARP. They to different parts of the room to plot against each other.
Okay, yeah, but not, it's all within the same building. I'm talking some people being in Boston, some people
yeah.
being in New York. You could do that in a tabletop.
Can't do
You
that.
can't do that in a LARP.
So that's another element that separates LARP from tabletop. Is in a LARP you have to create, either naturally or artificially, a space. Oh, hi, Linus.
Hi, Linus.
A space where
Another cat joins us.
Yep, where players can't simply leave the space during the playtime, especially in a horror game, where the natural inclination of many people, when things start to go sideways, is
Run.
Get out of here. This is not good. I'm leaving now before something worse happens to me.
Yeah, GTFO is definitely the typical reaction when you're dealing with, tentacled horror. Were you trying to catch him?
I was trying to.
Good luck. I'll let you try with that. Linus is what? That nope. Nope. That wasn't happening.
Okay, I tried to get Linus to show up on camera. That was not happening.
Yeah, he just zoom catted away from that. That was funny.
Sorry, pal. He's not.
I don't
big
see any of our babies.
Yeah,
no.
We have
They're
some
not
of our
around.
tentacle kitties nearby,
Oh, yeah.
such as Scylla and Lovecraft.
Hi.
So yes,
Nice.
we actually sometimes do use our variety of stuffed menagerie to come to our LARPs and act as non-playing characters. So we've had Lovecraft star in the boat and a few other ones that require sea creatures. So we add a little bit of whimsy. I mean, we do try to keep it on horror, but we also don't mind adding a bit of humor into it as well.
Of
And
course.
sometimes humor can really add depth to the horror as well.
Yeah.
One of the moments that I absolutely adore from a Mepicon run of a game, Walking Blues, which we've mentioned previously, Jacob Heft. And a
love
lot
Jake.
of Mepicon knowers know Jacob. He is this absolute teddy bear of a guy, is the best
By the
way I could
way,
describe him.
Jake comes to Mepicon because he's our friend and we brought him. It's
Thank
pretty
you.
much the
He's
only
awesome.
time of year we ever see Jake. And when we're there, we don't see him because he's always off doing all of the games. But he is absolutely one of our best friends and we love him to death. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
So Jake, in Walking Blues, one of the things that's really unique to the game is, even though it's a murder mystery, we don't have the murderer pre-scripted. We choose who the murderer is partway through the game.
Oh boy.
So people who don't think they're the murderer and everything could have said something really freaking incriminating earlier in the game, and Jacob essentially had done that. And we had absolutely a ton of fun. I was NPCing a particular character who is the lounge singer there. And like we even put like some of my lipstick on his cheek using a tissue to make it look like, shenanigans and such. And we had so much fun playing off of each other the majority of the night. And by the end, when he had lost so much of his sanity, there was one point that he stuck his head on my knee. I was petting his hair and I was singing a lullaby to him to, calm the baby down as the waters were rising. And, it seemed like everybody was going to die. And speaking about it, I mean, you could see my smile. I want to laugh hysterically because looking back, it was absolutely a hilarious, beautiful moment. But in the moment of horror, it takes on a different tinge and it's poignant and it's heart-wrenching almost in a way. And that's one of the things that I love with walking that line between horror and humor.
Yeah.
And
that game also
having that in there.
That game produced what I think is one of the finest moments I've ever seen, one of the creepiest, wonderful moments I've ever seen in a LARP.
This was not in a run I was in.
No, this was a Gen Con where the player who was playing the killer was overcome by emotion on seeing a prop we use, which is a bloody child shirt, essentially, which floats in at one point on a reminder that the killer is still out there. And in a moment when the singer finished, and before the next piece of music began, the player began singing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot in a low voice, but it echoed through the room, and other people then picked it up.
Oh, wow.
And pretty soon the entire room was singing along with him, not realizing, or maybe they did realize, I don't know, that the song was becoming a lament, realizing as the killer what he had done. And how that he was going to have to carry that weight.
That's one of the things that I think sets our LARPs apart compared to like White Wolf. There's occasionally like a shining moment that really hits you, but I could tell you stories where there's a moment like that at least one run of every game. Are Ashley and Megan. I know Ashley has been on some of the streams for Mepicon.
Mm-hmm.
She and her sister were amazing Egyptian mourners in my Mepicon run of Opening of the Mouth. Like sometimes when Kevin doesn't remember a name directly, I'm like, Kevin, the mourners. And he's like, oh yes, I know exactly who you're talking about.
So good.
And God, that was one game that was filled with death. I was also, because we flip roles and what we need to do throughout the game, that one we had so many players die. I had to sit there and be Anubis with the scarab heart and the feather of truth and weighing them for all these people because that many people died in this scenario. It was a murder fest.
We were ready for that one though. I mean, we had the heart.
Was that also snake murder?
Yes. We had the feather to weigh against people's hearts when they died. So we were anticipating the conga line of doom.
We weren't anticipating that long of a conga line of doom.
Yeah, but it turned out that there apparently was a waiting room.
Yeah, Death's waiting room had a nice waiting room in the Duat. That was hilarious. But we have those kind of moments where those of you who've played our games, ya boy, from the same game, And one of the things that we have is we have a wrap up where we pull back the curtain, explain some of the subplots that because you're wrapped up in one thing, you don't get to see.
Right.
And
This is how I find out about some of the subplots.
and
Yeah.
Ashley couldn't say Naharlatep. So she went, ya boy, over there, pointing at the person who ended up playing Naharlatep, Ben, actually. And that stuck.
Mhm.
Ya boy, holla at ya boy for Naharlatep is now a full-on running meme for us.
Accidentally created a few like that.
Oh my god. Dead Girls Tea Party is another one. That wasn't at Mepicon though.
Party Snakes.
Party Snakes, that's another. I mean,
That's where that game, Going to California, which is set at a record release party in
which we really
1967.
want to do at Mepicon. We just need enough people. So
Yeah,
this is a call that if you want to have battling bands, and you know who are the various bands riffed off of?
let's see.
Iggy Pop, I know, is
Yeah.
one.
Iggy, the bands are slightly disguised versions of real bands. Iggy and the Stooges, Led Zeppelin, Big Brother and the Holding Company. I can't remember the others right now.
You guys need
One we ran it at Gen Con where we had a large number because this game needs a minimum of about 30 to get off the ground.
Okay.
Minimum,
It's one
like
of our biggest.
hard minimum.
When we ran it at Gen Con, as we were organizing, a player walked in. He wasn't wearing a shirt. So I just reached into the character pile and handed him the Iggy Pop character. Like, this guy brought his costume.
Yeah. And
when was the last time you saw Iggy Pop wearing a shirt?
There's moments like that for all of our games. And a lot of times for Mepicon comes up with some of our wonderful doozies of memories. I mean, the pirate walking through the vendor hall. That's one of the that's now become a classic.
Yeah, a lot of the scenarios. The other thing about LARPs is a lot of scenarios are really numbers dependent.
Yes.
Because whereas with a tabletop game, you can run a game with 4 people or 6 people or 8 people
or 2.
With a LARP, some scenarios do not work without a certain number of people, either a minimum or a maximum.
Especially considering how much we work in the character sheets. We work so many subplots and backstories into the physical backstory sheet that we give each player about the character. I mean, and the reason why I keep using Opening of a Mouth as the example is because since it's my first baby, I know that backwards, forward, sideways, so I could just, pull it right off the top of my head. But I had a backplot of somebody who stole jewels from the treasury. And that was a little subplot that was mostly within the officials, not as much the royal family and not as much the priests. So if I don't have enough players and I don't have enough people playing those elected officials, that subplot may fall to the wayside because there's not enough representation of it.
But at least you can get the game going.
Exactly.
Some games, like Going to California, for instance, it's about a competition between bands, which means the game won't work with at least enough players to form 5 bands of 3 to 5 people per, plus the record company executives, plus a few others. So it's that game just doesn't work with a smaller number.
Yeah.
Whereas Bedlam Carcosa, we've run with as few as 5 or 6 and as many as 42.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget which year it was, but we had a snafu one time where we used a week-old list of signups for our sign-up sheets. And so I went through and I hand wrote in all the people who were missing from the list that had signed up in that final week. And the only game that was full was Kevin's. And I think this might have even been before Kim had signed on. And I remember going to Kevin and being like, listen, we made a mistake and we need to get this person into your game. And Kevin went, sure, no problem. And,
that's something else that we do frequently is that little secret. At smaller conventions, I will often deliberately include more slots than are intended because one of the things that I found that happens at smaller conventions, Mepicon doesn't suffer from this much, but some smaller conventions really do, where people will sign up
and not show up.
There's no cost to sign up, so they sign up taking the slot and then don't show up, which means A, there's nobody for the game, and B, people who wanted to sign up see that, it's full, I can't get in, and either leave
Right.
or decide to go do something else. So including more slots allows for that behavior. But more so, it's a personal thing. I hate to leave people out.
Yes.
So what we've done often is just add additional characters made up on the spur of the moment and
Oh,
connecting them in.
We absolutely have done that multiple times.
Bedlam Carcosa is easiest because we can always add more inmates.
Yeah, adding more crazy people, super easy.
But almost any game, the one exception that
Two at this point. We
Which
now
is-
have two exceptions
which
to
is the other
that.
one.
The one that we possibly, depending on how things go, run tonight.
Oh, pressure. Yeah, that's
yes.
right. So the only well, other than tonight, if we do that one, there's one scenario that we originally wrote for a small number called Depths of Space.
And that is our only true hard limits.
Non-expandable. The ones we wrote for the contest, Heart of the Sea, and then the Call.
Those were both hard limit 12, which we have since expanded and are expandable after, the confines of the competition.
Because the competition required writing for up to, but not more than 12 players.
Okay.
So when we ran and it's for a 2-hour slot, we expanded Heart of the Sea to be a 4-hour game. We added 6 more scripted characters.
I thought we added more than that.
No, it's 6 scripted.
Are you sure? I
Yes.
thought it was above 18 at
No,
this
there's
point.
18 scripted. We ran it with 19 with Steve.
Oh, right, with being the old drunk crazy guy,
Yeah.
right?
We took what had been a run-in NPC, a sailor who's been
Okay.
drinking too much, and turned him into a full-on playable character because we had
There you
19 for one run.
Yeah,
So we
that
had-
was at Gen Con.
So we had 18 scripted and just added one more, and in this case, you taking an NPC. That's something else that I learned very early on. When I initially started writing LARPs, I used a lot of NPCs. But from Megan and Eli, one of the things I learned was very valuable is trust your players. So a lot of the roles that I'd imagined should be NPCs aren't. You give them to players. At this point, the only NPCs are characters who either cannot remain for the whole game or who have a scripted ending.
Or scripted inside knowledge.
No, those can be player characters.
Well, I'm talking Orem with me being the computer. That is an
or a character who can't move and can't interact except when others interact with them.
Yeah. So
like Orem.
Yeah.
So other than that, no, we've run like Victims Ball was originally intended to have like 9 NPCs.
Wow.
Now it has at most 1.
Wow.
A guard of
The guard. Yeah, and the only reason that the guard remains an NPC is because his function is to remain in one place to mind an object, which means he doesn't have the freedom to move around like other players do.
the guillotine.
So
Of course.
So that character, when that character appears at all, often an NPC, but in a number of runs that character hasn't even bothered appearing because it's not an essential character.
Actually, bringing that back up, that made me think of another way that we try to what differs LARP from tabletop is not just being able to interact physically with players or with props. There's also tactile experiences that you can add.
Yes.
And Victims Ball has one very peculiar room to it called the map room. And
should we give this away? Because people who may play it might be listening.
It's true.
I mean, it's not as much of a giveaway. But all we'll say is that the map is on very special flooring.
Okay.
So you could actually experience it
Nice.
as you go into the room. And sometimes one of the things that, since we typically write for convention scenarios, we're typically using either masking tape on the floor or we're using tables on their sides and chairs and various other things that you would typically find around a conference room to be able to create our rooms and stuff like that for within our games. So it definitely is pushed adaptability with it. But when we create that particular room in particular, that's a fun one to watch a player walk into the room, not necessarily looking down, and seeing the face reaction.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this
It,
has been
it's a
wonderful.
lot of fun with that, and seeing player reaction and knowing the kind of feedback, especially that we get at the end of our games.
Yeah.
That really, it's addicting almost to
Yeah.
experience that. And it's one of the things that we love about what we do.
That's great. And we love you guys. We love having you at MEPACon. We appreciate that you have gone to the virtual environment with us so that we could continue.
It's been a challenge, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Hopefully we will be back to in-person by November. Fingers
I
crossed,
hope.
you know.
Yes, we're holding out some hope, but who knows?
Yeah.
But and if anybody's looking for something to do tonight, Kim and Kevin are running something at 8:00. Depends on how many people they have. That will determine the scenario.
And also how much tech decides to cooperate.
Yeah.
That's
we
always a
we
question.
have a new virtual LARP called Pressure, which is written to taking advantage. One of the things we've done with the virtual LARPs is we've tried to take advantage of the idea of what do you do when players can't interact.
Right.
So to create a situation where the characters are physically separated from each other. We've already done one, the forum, which went over pretty well. I heard of one, but I did not get a chance to play it, where the characters are spaceship pilots.
Okay, so they're all on different ships.
Yeah, like each of you is basically a space fighter pilot.
Nice.
And you're in your own space fighter, so you can communicate with your fellow squadron members, but you can't, of course, reach out and touch them because you're in a spaceship and they're in a spaceship.
Yes.
And that would be really awkward.
But
Yeah.
So
Awkward turtle.
yeah, so with this one, Pressure takes advantage of a similar situation. In this case, undersea explorers.
Okay, perfect.
Thus the title.
Right.
So as long as tech holds,
Which you
we'll figure it out.
Crossed.
if not, we'll do a tabletop.
Yeah, I mean, we're
right.
definitely going to be offering something. So if people want to jump on either the MEPACon Discord or our Discord server, feel free. And once we're leading up to 8:00, we'll discuss plans and how things are going. And holy cow, we've been talking for an hour, and I just
Yes.
realized.
Yeah, I watched. I saw the clock.
I wasn't paying attention,
Okay.
but that's what happens when you get us talking about LARPs. We just don't shut up.
Well, that's why
So how about
I
we grab
didn't
some
write a
lunch
list of
before-
questions for this
That sounds like a
live
good
stream
idea.
Okay,
because
we're
I
gonna go grab
figured we
some
would
lunch
have no
now.
problem just chatting.
Oh God, no!
Here we are.
Happy to do it. Happy
It's
to
always
Thank
a
you
lot
guys so
easier
much.
to just be chatting with friends,
Yes.
especially as good of friends as you guys are. 'Cause,
Yes.
happy
yeah.
to be part of it. All right,
We love you
lunchtime?
guys. You're part of the MEPACon family.
Integral part of the MEPACon family.
Oh, you know what we should also say before we go?
What's that?
If you're looking for more of what we do besides today at virtual MEPACon Day and future MEPACons, we are going to be taking part in virtual Gen Con. We are a part of Gen Con Online, listing through Elder Entertainment with Megan and Eli Levine. If you search for Elder Entertainment, you will see 3 runs of the forum, which we have cut on time and also number of players, so it's a little bit more accessible and easy to do. And there is also a run of Wes's. Is it Wes's LARP for In Hell?
In Hell, I'll be in good company.
Yes, which we highly recommend because it is a Zoom meeting for the Lords of Hell. So if you want to check that out,
Yes.
Elder
No
Entertainment.
one knows how to mute or unmute.
And we're doing some
Feedback
tabletops,
everywhere.
Yes, right.
Which tabletops are we doing? At
We're doing Prodigies of the New English Canon is one of the tabletops.
Okay.
And we have other tabletops on as well that Kevin will be running. But we have a essentially full Gen Con lineup from us.
Wonderful.
With running a tabletop each day and a run of the LARP. So if you're looking for more of what we're doing,
Virtual
That-
Gen Con.
Yeah, Gen Con Online is where to find
Awesome.
us, and definitely with giving props to Elder Entertainment because they're amazing people, and you should
Right.
check them out anyway at any Gen Con, whether in person or not, because they're
Yes.
amazing.
And if we're back
Yeah.
to real life in November, we'll bring Ad Astra then.
Yes.
We hope so.
Yeah,
Ad Astra is the working title of the Generation Ship game.
yes. So something for you to be excited about, and
It may not have that
Eager
title by
for.
November, but that's the working
yeah,
title.
who knows? Things change. You know how it goes. I
We
mean,
do.
tentacles randomly just start, coming into the screen.
Appearing the screen.
Scylla decided to wave bye. But anyway, we're
Tentacles?
gonna grab something to yes.
Love it.
Yes, a positional tentacle. I believe that's from Steve Jackson Games, right?
Yes.
I knew it. I've been wanting to get that tentacle in purple. Didn't it come in purple? I thought it came in
Yes,
purple.
we have a purple one too. Oh, it's over there. I can't reach
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I definitely want to get the purple one at some point
Yeah.
because purple.
Okay, we're gonna go
Yes,
find
I
some
know.
lunch.
Yes,
have-
and
We'll be back in
There
a
we
minute.
go.
we will be
Eric's
back
gonna
at
help you out
slightly
here.
before.
There we go.
There's the
Yeah,
purple one.
purple one.
Yeah, I want
We
that
have
so-
everything Steve Jackson. Everything.
Yeah, I want that so
Everything.
bad. I'm not gonna lie. Because prop
Right.
and also because
And
Yes.
personally, big fan of GURPS.
yes.
Yes.
But
I say that from New York, where people hate GURPS, but it's a great game. It's a great system. I love it. What? No,
We have,
I know.
I know why.
these
Anyway,
are all
okay.
GURPS books. All
Oh,
of
do you
these.
have GURPS? By the way, do you have GURPS villains?
I don't know. I'll look. All
'cause
right,
if
guys.
you-
Thank you
if
so
you
much
have
for
GURPS
checking out
villains,
our live stream. And this is
open
it
it
for
up
this
and you will
weekend. But
find
stay
me
tuned,
in
and we
there.
will definitely be doing some more online stuff, probably before November, hopefully, and then definitely we'll be back the first weekend of November. Thanks again, Carcosa, Kim, and Kevin. We really appreciate you joining us today. And
Thanks for having
everybody out
us.
there, stay
thank you.
safe, stay healthy, so we can see you in person as soon as possible.
Yes, and that goes for everybody out there. Stay healthy, dang it.
Keep your mask on.
Yes,
Yes.
properly over your nose.
Yeah.
What's up?
Not a chin strap. A
Yeah.
mask.
Yes.
Thank you, Cuomo. What, did you see that? It was like,
Yes,
I
I
didn't tell you
did.
to wear a chin strap, you idiots.
It's comedy.